Thanks, councillors. It's 6 o'clock, so I'll open tonight's Community and Cultural Committee meeting. First of all, I'll read the advice on recording and webcasting. This committee meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the committee meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this committee meeting that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. AlburyCity accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this committee meeting, and audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. That brings us to item 2, conflict of interest declarations. I've received none. Mr. Zacknish, did you receive any? Okay. Item 3, apologies. I haven't received any apologies tonight. Item 4.1, minutes of the previous meeting, please, councillors. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move the minutes of the Community and Cultural Committee meeting held on Monday, the 11th of December 2017 at 6 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Mack.
Happy to second that, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, would you like to speak to those minutes at all? Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? That's carried. Item 5, matters arising from the minutes. We don't have any tonight. Item 6, reports and minutes of committees and working parties. Councillor Mack.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to move that the minutes from the Alexandra Park Athletic Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 7th of February 2018 be accepted. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Mack, would you like to speak to that item?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks. No further speakers, so I'll put the motion. All those for? Against? That's carried. Item 7, officers' reports for consideration. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that the committee recommend to Council that Council A, receive and note the contents of the report, and B, endorse the naming of the terrace seating and shade shelters proposed construction in 2019-20, the Les O'Brien stand, with a formal decision to be organised following the construction of the terrace seating. Dedication.
Thank you.
Dedication, sorry.
Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second with pleasure, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, would you like to speak to that item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, very briefly, there has been a lot of discussion I've seen in local media and on social media. But if you read this report carefully, the family has been consulted and a number of hurdles about other forms of recognition have been raised. But on this one, the family's been consulted. It seems to me that they are happy with this decision, and they will even have some part in the way the final look of this dedication of the stand goes. So I think it has achieved appropriate recognition of a man who spent a lot of his life around athletics, and what more appropriate could it be than a new facility, terrace seating, is named after this man. So I think it's appropriate, and it appears to have the blessing of his family.
Thank you. I have no speakers against, so I'll have another speaker for. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, and I do acknowledge the indulgence. Thank you for that. Through you, Madam Chair, to the committee, I support Councillor Thurley and Councillor Doxey with the recommendation as the motion, and agree with the points raised by Councillor Thurley. But in addition to that, I'd like to add that should this proceed, then it would enable other significant contributors in the future to also be recognised within that facility. This would set a precedent that various components within the greater facility could be named after significant members of our community who have contributed significantly, as Mr O'Brien has indeed done over many years. So that is why I'm supporting this recommendation, and I think it's a great outcome. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. We have another speaker for, given the late agenda tonight, I'm happy to have that. Councillor Doxey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I strongly support the words of Councillor Thurley, and I note with delight that the family themselves have agreed to this proposal. So therefore, I see there is no reason why councillors should not support it. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no further speakers. Councillor Thurley, would you like to close the debate? No, thank you. I'll now put the motion. All those in favour? Anyone against? Thank you. That motion's carried. Item 8, officers' reports for noting, we have none. Delegates' reports for noting, we have none. Councillors, is there any notice of urgent business tonight? We have none. There are no confidential matters. I'll close the meeting at 6:05 p.m. Thank you.
I with that one. Thank you, and I declare open the minutes of the Finance Administration Committee. And the first point of business is recording and webcasting. This committee meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the committee meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this committee meeting, that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. AlburyCity accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this committee meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Conflict of interest, I've received none. None received, Mr General Manager. FAC 3, apologies. None received. 4, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. Councillor Vandervan.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Happy to move the recommendation of the minutes of the Finance and Administration Committee meeting held on Monday, 11 December 2017 at 6:34 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you. And Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Vandervan, do you wish to speak to the motion? I'll put the motion. All in favour? On the contrary, the motion is carried. Are there any matters arising? Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Through you, I believe it's appropriate to raise questions about the meeting and the minutes at this point. Page 4, FAC 7.1, the banking services contract. I'm wondering if staff at some stage might be able to give us an update on that, and happy to take that on notice or a verbal update at some stage. That would be fantastic.
Mr Zakanich.
Certainly, we're able to take that on notice and provide you with an update as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Chair.
Then I will put, sorry, that's the only matter arising, so I'll move on to FAC 6. Committees and working parties, there are none. FAC 7, 7.1, the December quarterly budget review. And Councillor Conn.
I actually had a question, but I'm happy to move the motion as well. I move that the committee recommends to Council that Council A, receive and adopt the revised budget estimates for the 2017-18 financial year, and B, note the supplementary reports, including the consultancy and legal expenditure and contract expenditure listing.
Thank you. And Councillor Mack.
Happy to second that, Mr Chair.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Conn, you have a question.
I did. Thank you, Mr Chair. Through to the relevant member of staff, please, with regards to the consultancy and legal expenditure document. I just noted that we had a significant increase in consultancies and wondering what that was related to.
Mr Finlayson.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Just bringing up the relevant document. Just to clarify through you, Mr Chair, I believe with respect to consultancy expenditure, there's a forecast decrease in expenditure as a result of the December quarter budget review, which is reflected in the commentary in the covering report, I believe, with respect to the water and sewer funds and the works to be done in that space. Just to clarify that, Mr Chair.
Councillor Conn.
Thanks. I'm all right for the moment. I'll put through a further question on notice.
Thank you. I have another question from Councillor Vandervan.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Through you to the relevant member of staff. If we go to page 10 of our electronic agenda, and under deteriorations 4.024 million. The second paragraph of the first bullet point, this cost increase will be partially offset by 700,000 during the current financial year. I'm struggling to come to terms with the wording of this, as we have a $3.2 million variation, and whichever way you put that, it's a $3.2 million variation. You can't offset the cost of that. You might defer some of the deteriorations, but you can't change the costs. Is that correct?
Mr. Finlayson?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Van der Ven is correct from a total project cost point of view. However, with the focus of this report being the timing of expenditure for the current financial year, there are some project elements that won't be completed this financial year as previously budgeted for, so it's just a timing difference, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Van der Ven.
And I know that this is going to be the subject of a further report as per the observations in the report. But the whole of the cost overrun has been incurred in this financial year. I mean, all of the work for that cost overrun has, according to the reports that we've had during the mystery tour that we had, the work was complete and we're back on track. So all of that $3.2 million has been incurred in this financial year. So I'm not sure what any playing around with moving or rescheduling or whatever of $700,000 is going to achieve. It seems to me that the net capital results, it's just being manipulated by just moving a few numbers around. So maybe I need to sit down with Mr. Finlayson and understand the process. But we seem to be achieving a good capital result by maybe deferring a few projects and shoveling a few numbers around. So I'm not sure.
I'll let Mr. Finlayson dig the question out and then answer it.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, for example, yes, the civil construction works have costed more than expected this financial year, and those costs will be incurred this financial year. There were other project elements where we had some budget allocated for this financial year, including the amenities facility, which, due to the review of the design and the like, it's likely that the timing of those works will be predominantly in the next financial year rather than the current financial year. So that's why there have been some other project elements that have been, the timing of expenditure will be in the next financial year rather than the current financial year.
Chair, thank you for your indulgence. On that basis, maybe that the wording of that item says that, but your explanation, why couldn't your explanation have been part of the original documentation and specifically say that this project, and maybe I haven't read it right, but I'm just wondering why we couldn't have said that in the first place.
Mr. Zachnich.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Thanks for the further question, Councillor Van der Ven. So what Mr. Finlayson is essentially saying is, as at the December quarter budget review, we've expended an amount of $2.5. That, as you rightly say, the estimate of that expenditure will be 3.2, which will allocate and report on more fully in that further report. And obviously, a further adjustment will be required at the third quarter budget review. So it is a timing thing. We've tried to cover off on the fact that it is the December quarterly budget review, but added some commentary that construction contract variation is, as we've said, in the order of 3.2. So it's addressing the quarterly budget review outcome as indicated, notwithstanding the result is greater than that.
Thank you. So if there are no more questions, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? The motion is carried. FAC 7.2, 6 monthly service and efficiency review update. I need a mover. No one's happy about this one. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Through you to move the recommendation as page 16, that the committee recommends to Council that Council receive and note the 6-month December 2017 update of the Service and Efficiency Review Program, Mr Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr Chair.
Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Glacken?
Simply to note, Mr Chair, that it's an ongoing program that Council initiated a number of years ago, before, in fact, the term of this current council, and it's been extremely favourable to the council as well as to our community. So to recommend that we move and receive this report. Thank you, Mr Chair.
I have no other questions or comments, so I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? The motion is carried. FAC 8, Officers' Reports. 8.1, Councillor Conference Attendance. Councillor Mack.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I have to move that the committee recommends to Council that Council receive and note the report on Council attendance at conferences for the period 1 July 2017 to 31 December 2017. Thank you.
Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Apologies for being late to the meeting, and I would like to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Mack, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, Mr Chair. I think it's quite self-explanatory.
Councillor Vanderven, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr Chair. I know that the council approved the attendance of 6 councillors at this particular conference, the conference, the local government conference, but I thought we had a previous, there were 6 councillors attending. Next page. Next page.
Continue, Councillor Vanderven.
Sorry. Sorry, I had somebody chewing me ear. But what I recall in the previous term of council, which is not that long ago, that we as a council had made a decision that to get every councillor to have an opportunity to attend the local government conference, that we would send the number of delegates as per the number of votes that we had, the deputy mayor and mayor to go, and then the other councillors would be rotated during the 4-year term of council. But I'm not sure whether we were aware of this when we voted to send 6 councillors to this particular conference. Is anybody able to shed light on that particular issue, please?
Thanks for the question through you, Mr Chair. So the Council's policy indicates that 4 voting delegates, which equals the number of voting delegates Council has allocated at these conferences, will attend, and Council determines, other than the Mayor and Deputy Mayor, who those councillors will be. On this occasion, Councillor Vanderven, Council also determined an additional 2 councillors to attend as observers, and that was part of the process. So they're attendees or observers over and above the 4 delegate allocation. In terms of the allocation of attendance as delegate or otherwise to different councillors on different occasions, while that may have been a practice in the past, it's not the stated policy of the council at this stage.
Just a bit of a follow-up. Thank you, Mr Chair. On the basis of the fact that at some stage we were sort of writing letters to local government New South Wales about, how, relevant that organisation actually was to local government in New South Wales. I just wonder whether, 6 is an appropriate number, and maybe we should, consider restricting it to 4 people annually, because obviously the cost is quite extensive.
Thank you, Councillor Vanderman. Councillor Mack, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. In relation to the policy that was initially brought in during my first term of council, would it be appropriate to address this when we review the model code of conduct?
Yes, and it's called the Council Expenses and Facilities Policy, which will need to be reviewed again in the near future.
I have no other speakers either for or against. I guess my comment was that after that first year on the 2012 council, where I think at least 6 councillors went, councillors generally agreed that it would be the mayor, deputy mayor and 2 other councillors on rotation, so that in the term of the council, every councillor will get the opportunity. I still think that is a good model, and we should take the opportunity when reviewing the provision of facilities and expenses policy to have another look at that. It can only ever be a guideline unless we adopt it strictly as a policy, but I think it's well worth consideration what value you get from 6 councillors going to that one conference. Anyway, I'll put the motion. All in favour? On the contrary, the motion is carried. Investment balances 2017, FAC 8.2. Councillor Vandervan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to move the recommendation. The committee recommends to council that council receive and note the investment balances report for the month of December 2017.
Councillor Mack.
Over to second that, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Vandervan, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, briefly. Obviously, council has quite a lot of money, cash reserves, a lot of it hypothecated or spoken for with sewer and water funds and the general fund, but to note the council is in a reasonably liquid position financially.
I have no other question or comments, so I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? The motion is carried. FAC 8.3 is the investment balance for January 2018. Councillor Vandervan.
Happy to move again that the committee recommends to council receive and note the investment balances report for the month of January 2018.
Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I don't have any questions or comments. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Vandervan?
Similar comments as per the previous report, Mr. Chair.
I have no other questions or comments, so I'll put the motion. All in favour? Contrary? The motion is carried. FAC 8.4, Corporate Health Indicators, December 2017. For a mover somewhere. Councillor Stutchbury.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to recommend that the committee report to council that we accept this report, receive and note the December 2017 Corporate Health Indicators report.
Thank you. And Councillor Vandervan.
Happy to second, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Stutchbury, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have no other questions or comments, so I'll put that motion. All in favour? The contrary, the motion is carried. FAC 8.5, Delivery Program 6 Monthly Progress Report, December 2017. And Councillor Mack.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to move the committee recommends to council that council receive and note the Delivery Program 6 Monthly Progress Report, December 2017. Thanks.
And Councillor Doxey.
Happy to second, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Mack, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, Mr. Chair, just to say that generally it augurs well for the organisation. There is a couple of red faces in relation to planning and approvals, but we all understand that that is a case of staffing and certainly staffing shortages, and it won't be much longer before it's back on track. But yet again, I commend the staff on keeping us on track and doing a good job for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. I have no other questions or comments. I'll put the motion. All in favour? On the contrary, the motion's carried. I have no delegates' reports, no notice of urgent business and no confidential matters, so I'll declare the meeting closed at 6:25. Thank you.